The air in the luxury apartment lobby was cold and smelled of expensive perfume. The floor was made of shiny white marble that reflected the light from a giant crystal chandelier. It was the kind of place that whispered money without making a sound. My father's voice cut through the quiet like a knife. "Stop pretending you can afford this," he said sharply. Every head in the room turned to look at us. The real estate agent, people waiting in the lobby, even the man behind the front desk. They all stared. My father's words carried the same old humiliation they always did, dressed up in his usual arrogance and disappointment. Before we go further, I'd love to know who's listening. Where are you joining from? Tell me your city in the comments below. And after you've heard my whole story, be honest. What would you have done in my situation? Tell me in the comments. We read every single one. Now, let's begin. Dad, I began, but my sister Megan cut me off. She let out a laugh that was just loud enough to sting. "Oh, please, Avery," she scoffed, adjusting the expensive designer bag on her shoulder. "You can't even pay your own phone bill. Why are we wasting this poor man's time?" The real estate agent, a young man in a neat suit, looked back and forth between us. His polite smile was fading. He fidgeted with his clipboard, looking like he wished he could disappear into the marble floor. I stood there, forcing myself to take slow, even breaths. Every insult they had ever thrown at me came rushing back. Every time they told me I would never amount to anything. Every sneer when I tried to explain I was building my own business. It all came crashing down on me in that single moment. But not this time. "Actually," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, "I can afford it." My father gave a dry, humorless chuckle. "Oh, really? With what? Your waitressing tips? Don't embarrass yourself, Avery. Some people know their place in life, and you should learn yours." His words felt like shards of glass, sharp and cold. But I didn't flinch. I looked him directly in the eye and smiled. "Funny thing, Dad," I said. "I stopped believing in places a long time ago." Megan rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh, here we go. The big motivational speech. Are we done here? I have dinner plans with people who can actually pay their rent." The air in the luxury apartment lobby was cold and smelled of expensive perfume. The floor was made of shiny white marble that reflected the light from a giant crystal chandelier. It was the kind of place that whispered money without making a sound. My father's voice cut through the quiet like a knife. "Stop pretending you can afford this," he said sharply. Every head in the room turned to look at us. The real estate agent, people waiting in the lobby, even the man behind the front desk. They all stared. My father's words carried the same old humiliation they always did, dressed up in his usual arrogance and disappointment. Before we go further, I'd love to know who's listening. Where are you joining from? Tell me your city in the comments below. And after you've heard my whole story, be honest. What would you have done in my situation? Tell me in the comments. We read every single one. Now, let's begin. Dad, I began, but my sister Megan cut me off. She let out a laugh that was just loud enough to sting. "Oh, please, Avery," she scoffed, adjusting the expensive designer bag on her shoulder. "You can't even pay your own phone bill. Why are we wasting this poor man's time?" The real estate agent, a young man in a neat suit, looked back and forth between us. His polite smile was fading. He fidgeted with his clipboard, looking like he wished he could disappear into the marble floor. I stood there, forcing myself to take slow, even breaths. Every insult they had ever thrown at me came rushing back. Every time they told me I would never amount to anything. Every sneer when I tried to explain I was building my own business. It all came crashing down on me in that single moment. But not this time. "Actually," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, "I can afford it." My father gave a dry, humorless chuckle. "Oh, really? With what? Your waitressing tips? Don't embarrass yourself, Avery. Some people know their place in life, and you should learn yours." His words felt like shards of glass, sharp and cold. But I didn't flinch. I looked him directly in the eye and smiled. "Funny thing, Dad," I said. "I stopped believing in places a long time ago." Megan rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh, here we go. The big motivational speech. Are we done here? I have dinner plans with people who can actually pay their rent." Megan was the first to freeze. Her phone nearly slipped from her perfectly manicured hand. "Wait, this is yours?" she stammered. I smiled faintly. "Yes, I bought it last year." My father walked in slowly. His expensive shoes made a sharp sound on the Italian marble floor. His face was a twisted mask of disbelief and anger, the look of a man whose world has suddenly stopped following his rules. He turned to me sharply. "How?" he demanded. "You didn't even finish college. You quit your stable job. I started my own company," I interrupted, my voice steady. "It wasn't easy, but I did it. No bank loans, no family handouts, and definitely without your help." He scoffed, shaking his head. "Impossible. You were always the irresponsible one. Always chasing dreams that don't pay the bills. Not everything I built was for your approval, I said quietly. The realtor, still standing politely by the door, saw his chance to speak. If you'll notice, sir, this penthouse includes a private elevator, a rooftop garden, and this exclusive skyline view. Miss Porter also owns the adjoining suite, which is currently being renovated into her design studio. Megan blinked. You have a studio too? I nodded. 2, actually. One here, and one in Los Angeles. Her mouth fell open in pure disbelief. You moved to LA? I looked around my home, running my hand along the smooth kitchen counter. I didn't move, I said. I expanded. My father let out a low, bitter laugh. All of this, just to prove something to us. No, I replied, looking right at him. To prove something to myself. He said nothing, but I saw a flicker in his eyes, a pride he didn't want to admit he felt. Megan tried to cover her shock with sarcasm. So what? You're rich now. You think money changes who you are. I turned to her, meeting her glare with a calm that surprised even me. Money doesn't change who I am, Megan. It just changes how you see me. The silence that followed was heavy and deep. It was the kind of silence that forces people to see themselves clearly, maybe for the very first time. The realtor smiled nervously. Would you like to see the balcony? It offers one of the most exclusive views in the city. Yes, please, I said. He opened the giant sliding glass doors, and a clean, crisp wind swept into the room. It carried the scent of a freedom I had spent years chasing. The view seemed to stretch on forever. Glittering lights, silver skyscrapers, the busy heartbeat of the city that had once ignored me. Megan stepped out beside me, whispering under her breath. I honestly thought you'd end up living with Dad forever. I looked at her, feeling no anger now, just the simple truth. So did he. My father's reflection appeared behind us in the glass. His voice, low and uncertain, finally broke the quiet. Avery, I didn't know you were doing all this. I know, I said softly. You never asked. For a moment, he looked smaller. He looked like the man who used to tell me bedtime stories, before his ambition hardened his heart. I took one last look at the skyline before turning back inside. I think we're done here, I said to the realtor. He nodded. Of course, Miss Porter. I'll send the renewal forms to your assistant this evening. Megan blinked again. Assistant? I smiled faintly. Yes, her name is Claire. She manages the kind of schedule one used to only dream of having. My father said nothing more as we prepared to leave. His silence followed me back into the elevator, thick with realization. As the doors closed, I caught my reflection one last time. I looked stronger, calmer, completely free from the need for their approval. This time, I wasn't the daughter who failed. I was the woman who built everything they said she couldn't. The city outside my windows shimmered with a million lights, but inside my penthouse, everything felt strangely still and quiet. The shock from my family hung in the air like smoke after a fire has been put out. I stood barefoot on the balcony. A cool wind brushed against my hair. I held a simple glass of water, not the fancy champagne people expect successful women to drink. To me, success never tasted like victory. It tasted like exhaustion. And finally, like silence, I heard soft footsteps behind me. My father had stayed. Megan had left quickly, muttering something about needing fresh air, though we all knew she just couldn't stand being in a room where she wasn't the most important person. My father's reflection appeared in the glass door. He looked older. His shoulders slouched. His voice no longer boomed. You really did all this yourself? He asked quietly. I turned slowly to face him. Yes. Every single contract, every risk I took, every late night when I couldn't afford dinner but refused to quit. He rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding my eyes. I thought you'd fall apart without help. You didn't think I'd survive, I said, my voice sharp but calm. You thought I'd make it without your approval. His lips parted, but no words came out. For the first time in years, he didn't sound like a man in control. He just sounded human. I set my glass down on the counter. Do you remember the day you told me I'd never make it on my own? He frowned, thinking. Avery, I cut in. You said I'd come crawling back. That the world doesn't reward dreamers. You told everyone at a family dinner that Megan was the quote, real success of the family. He lowered his gaze to the floor. That was years ago. Yes, I said, stepping closer. But words don't have an expiration date, Dad. They stay with people, especially when they come from someone you once looked up to. The silence between us was painful. It wasn't an angry silence anymore. It was just filled with all the things that should have been said a long, long time ago. He finally looked up at me. I was hard on you, because I didn't want to see you fail. No, I said softly, shaking my head. You were hard on me because you couldn't imagine me succeeding. That hit him. His jaw tensed. and his eyes looked glassy under the dim lights. He took a slow, deep breath. "You're right," he admitted. "I didn't see it then. I was wrong." The words felt so foreign coming from him. For a moment, I almost couldn't believe I had heard them correctly. "I'm proud of you," he added, his voice barely a whisper. I just didn't know how to say it without feeling small. I stared at him, then walked back toward the balcony doors. The city lights reflected in my eyes like distant memories. "It's okay," I said. "You don't need to say it. I didn't do this to make you proud. I did it to stop feeling broken." He nodded slowly. "You sound like your mother." That made me pause. My mother had passed away years ago, long before I ever found my footing. "I wish she could have seen this," I whispered. "She would have loved it," he said. "And she would have told me to stop being an idiot." That made me laugh quietly, despite the lump in my throat. He smiled a faint, sad smile, like a man realizing far too late that his pride had cost him love. As he turned to leave, he stopped at the elevator and looked back. "You built something amazing, Avery. Don't let anyone, especially me, make you feel small again." When the elevator doors closed, I was alone once more, standing in the soft hum of the city. I walked to the balcony railing and breathed in the cold night air. Somewhere far below, car horns blended into the sounds of life, reminding me how far I'd come from the girl who used to count pennies at a diner. For the first time, I didn't feel angry. I felt healed. The revenge I thought I wanted wasn't about their humiliation. It was about finding my own peace. And tonight, I finally had it. Morning light crept through the glass walls, painting the penthouse in soft gold. I hadn't slept much, not because I was restless, but because peace, after years of struggle, felt almost too quiet to be real. I made coffee the same way I used to in my old, run-down studio apartment. Cheap beans, no sugar. The only difference was the view. Back then, it was a view of a dirty brick wall and a noisy fire escape. Now it was a $1,000,000 view of the city skyline. My phone buzzed on the counter. Megan's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated for a moment, but curiosity won. "Can we talk?" her message read. An hour later, she showed up at my door. She wore no makeup. Her usual staged confidence was gone. There was no laughter at my expense. It was just Megan, standing there like a stranger who wasn't sure she was welcome. I opened the door. "You're early. I didn't sleep much either," she murmured. "Can I come in?" I nodded and stepped aside. She walked in slowly, her eyes scanning the place like she still couldn't believe it was real. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Everything about it. It's so you." "Thanks," I said simply, pouring her a cup of coffee. She took the mug with shaky hands. "Avery, I owe you an apology." I leaned against the kitchen counter, studying her. "You don't owe me anything." "Yes, I do." Her voice cracked. "I was awful to you. I laughed when Dad mocked you. I ignored your calls when you needed someone to believe in you. I thought you were just lost." I said nothing. I had imagined this conversation 100 times. In my mind, it always ended with me yelling or delivering a perfect, cutting remark. But now, looking at her tear-streaked face, I didn't want any of that. "I was jealous," she admitted, lowering her head. "You had courage. You failed. And yes, you failed a lot. But you kept going. And I never did. I just played it safe, trying to keep Dad happy." Her confession hung heavily between us. For a moment, I saw us not as rivals, but as we used to be. Two little girls sitting on our bedroom floor, dreaming about growing up, before life turned us into competitors. "Megan," I said softly, "I didn't build all this to prove you wrong." She looked up, confused. "Then why did you?" I smiled faintly. "To prove I wasn't what you all said I was." Her lip trembled. "And now that you have it, what do you feel?" I glanced out at the skyline, free. A comfortable silence stretched between us. It was the kind of silence that heals, not hurts. She finally nodded. "You're stronger than any of us ever gave you credit for." I chuckled lightly. "Took you long enough to notice." We both laughed. It was a small, genuine sound that felt like the first piece of our broken childhood finding its way back. Then Megan's tone turned serious again. "Dad told me he's selling the old house. He said it feels empty now." I swallowed hard. "Maybe it's time." She looked down into her coffee cup. "He regrets everything, Avery. He told me he wishes he could take it all back." I turned away, blinking against the sudden sting in my eyes. "Regret doesn't rewrite history." "No," she said gently. "But maybe it starts a new one." Her words landed deep in my heart. I walked out onto the balcony, to the same spot I'd stood the night before. The same wind wrapped around me. "Do you know what the hardest part was, Megan?" I asked quietly. She shook her head. "It wasn't the nights I went hungry. It wasn't the strangers who doubted me. It was realizing that my own family, the people I loved, saw me as a joke. That broke me in ways that success can't ever fully fix. Megan's eyes glistened with tears. I know, she whispered, and I'll spend every day trying to make it right. Something inside me finally softened. I reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder. Then that's enough. We stood there for a while. Two sisters, once divided by pride and pain, now bound together again by something real and fragile. The elevator chimed softly in the background. My father stepped out. He looked older in the daylight, tired, but humble. The arrogance and sarcasm were gone, replaced by a quiet remorse. I wasn't sure if I'd be welcome, he said carefully. I turned toward him. You're always welcome, Dad. You just have to come with respect this time. He nodded slowly, his eyes glistening. I deserve that. He looked around the penthouse, his voice low with awe. You did what I never could. You made something from nothing. I'm proud of you, Avery. It was a simple sentence, but it hit me harder than I ever expected. For a moment, I just stared at him. Years of hurt clashed with the sudden warmth in his tone. Finally, I said, I didn't need to hear that. But it still means everything. He smiled, a faint, genuine smile. I'm glad. We sat together for a while, the three of us, drinking coffee in a comfortable silence. We weren't rivals or strangers anymore. We were just a family who had finally, after a long and painful journey, begun to understand each other. When they left later that morning, the elevator doors closed with a soft sigh. I stood alone again in my glass palace. But this time, I didn't feel alone. I walked back to the balcony. The morning sun kissed my face. The city buzzed below, full of dreams, mistakes, and second chances. I took a deep, clean breath. Years ago, I was the girl who begged for validation. Today, I am the woman who built her own worth. And as the wind swept through my hair, one final thought settled in my heart, as quiet and powerful as thunder. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't about proving them wrong. It's about finally proving yourself right.